maybe yellow's not my color, but I like it. So, that's okay. What's up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I wanted to talk about the 2-week wait that you go through when you're trying to conceive. It's definitely something that I know I was out there looking for other people on YouTube that were giving their experiences, what their symptoms were, because I was so in my head and so nervous that I really wanted to hear from other people. So if you're one of those people, hello, how are you? I know it's a hard time right now. Are you okay? Get some water. Good? Okay. I am currently 20 weeks pregnant with a little baby boy. We did IVF, and this was my experience with the 2-week wait. As far as symptoms go, emotions were definitely my number one. I definitely was very on edge. I was super nervous. I was super anxious. All of that probably is more so just because I was going through the 2-week wait, not necessarily like an early pregnancy symptom. As far as physical symptoms go, I definitely was really, really thirsty. That's the biggest thing that I noticed was I was drinking water like there was no tomorrow. Like if I didn't know that I was going through the 2-week wait, I would have thought there was something wrong with me. That's how thirsty I was. And probably because of that, I was definitely going to the bathroom more often. I didn't really feel like that was necessarily a pregnancy symptom, but I was drinking a lot more water, and I did feel like it was more urgent that I had to go more often. I had a little bit of cramping in my lower abdomen, not necessarily implantation related. I'll get into that in a second, but more so like if I was sitting kind of curled up, like if I was leaning forward or my knees were up, anything like that, it definitely started to feel a little bit uncomfortable. Not painful, really, I just noticed that it felt different. So I would kind of stretch out a little more. We did IVF, so we knew for sure that this was the 2-week wait. We knew, like, I was paying super close attention to everything that was going on with my body because I knew that I wanted it to be positive. So I was definitely in tune with what was going on, noticing every little symptom, any little cramp. I was like on top of it. So I'm not saying that this is going to be typical for anybody else. This is just what I experienced. So we did a frozen transfer at the end of August of 2020. 2020? Yes. Yeah, 2020. It's been a crazy year, so kind of lost track of time. So yes, 2-week wait was going into the beginning of September. My mom had come with me. My wife was deployed overseas at the time. She still is. So my mom went with me to the transfer. Obviously, because of COVID restrictions, she couldn't go into the transfer, but I did spend the recovery period with her. As far as implantation goes, the day after transfer, I did notice a little bit of cramping in my abdomen, nothing that was painful and nothing that really, really stood out to me. I just felt a sort of general discomfort. I didn't have any spotting. I didn't have any kind of bleeding of any kind. I didn't have an extra amount of discharge or anything like that. That's something that I know for me, I wouldn't say was worried about, but was cautious about because I see so many people out there either on YouTube or that share their stories on Instagram that did have some sort of symptoms of implantation. So you start to think, you're like, well, maybe it didn't happen because I haven't had any symptoms. I'm here to tell you it happened and I had no symptoms. After that, of course, I was taking it pretty easy for the first 2, almost 3 days. I didn't really do a whole lot. I was just really trying to kind of let my body rest and do what it needed to do. One thing that's a little bit gross, kind of personal, but I had never heard of anybody else having this, so I'm going to tell you. When I did go to the bathroom, my urine smelled so much more concentrated. Not in a bad way, not in a gross way, just more concentrated. Like my kidneys were on overdrive, like everything was being processed out of my body all at once. And because of that, it just had a stronger smell to it. So of course, I'm like noticing this and looking it up, and it's totally normal. It's not a big deal. It does happen to some people during pregnancy. So that was something that I definitely noticed for myself. Not saying it's going to happen to you, but if it does, you're not alone. As far as my hunger goes or any kind of appetite, nothing really changed for me. That could be because I am not a nervous eater. When I get nervous, I tend to actually eat less. So it could have just been that I'm nervous going through this 2-week wait. I'm wanting things to be positive and I don't really know what's going on. So it could have just been that I just wasn't eating because I was nervous. But I definitely didn't notice an increase in appetite or a decrease in appetite. I felt like it pretty much just stayed the same. I wasn't really craving anything in particular. I just kind of was wanting what I was wanting in the moment. Like if I wanted a burger, I was like, okay, I need to go get a burger. But it wasn't, I'm eating a potato for every meal. Not yet, anyway. That did happen with potatoes specifically, but not during the 2 weeks. As far as chest soreness, I did have a very little bit, but nothing more so than what I would have had with an oncoming period. I also, because it was an IVF cycle, I was on estrogen and progesterone. So it's a little difficult to tell if that was an early pregnancy symptom, if it was from the medication. And at the time, I didn't know if it was from an impending period. And unfortunately, that's kind of par for the course for a lot of early pregnancy symptoms. A lot of it is very similar to what you would get starting your cycle. So it's really kind of hard to tell. Definitely the biggest thing for me during the 2-week wait was my emotions. I noticed I was super nervous. I was really anxious. It's a very emotional process. I know anybody that's going through it understands that it's such a toll for your emotions. Anybody watching this that is actively trying to conceive and you're wondering and you're like going through this 2-week wait, you know what line progression is, most likely. Some people decide to do at-home testing during the 2-week wait from an IVF cycle. I was not one of those people. For me, I knew that once I started, I was not going to be able to stop. So I just avoided it altogether. Some people during this time will take at-home tests and they'll watch the positive line get darker and darker. That's what line progression is. For me, like I said, it just was going to make me more anxious. So I just skipped that part. At the end of the 2 weeks, I was scheduled for a beta test, which is where you go in, they do a blood test in the morning, and they test your level of HCG, which is the pregnancy hormone, which lets you know that something has been successful. So beginning of September, I went in at 7:15 a.m. to go get this blood test done, and then I had to wait all day until about 1 in the afternoon by myself. Something that helped me get through that morning, which I know is not going to work for everybody, so let me just put that out there. But for me, I actually went to the bookstore and I got a pregnancy journal. It's called 40 Weeks. It's super cute if you want to look it up. But that was something that for me kind of put my positivity into something physical. So I definitely had gone through, and my wife as well, had gone through the periods of time where there was like a fear surrounding buying anything pregnancy or baby related. And that's a very real thing. So if you're going through that, it's totally normal. I definitely, for the longest time, had this feeling that if I bought something, it wasn't going to work. Or if it didn't work, it's because I bought something, like a jinx, which in all reality has no correlation. But for people that are going through infertility and trying to conceive, you don't have a reason. You don't have like, this is why it's not working. So your mind just kind of goes, what did we do today that could have messed this up? Oh, I bought that book. It's fun. It's a great time. But for me, it was definitely something that I kind of came around to that, I was really wanting this to work. I was wanting the cycle to be successful. And I decided that for me, putting that positivity into going and buying something that was pregnancy related without that fear attached to it, as much as I could anyway, was helpful for me. So throughout the rest of that morning, if I was feeling more anxious or getting, worked up because I was wanting to know what was happening and I wasn't getting my call, I would just kind of look over towards the book. I hadn't opened it or written anything in it or anything like that. I just had it kind of around. And I would look over to it and try to remind myself that, it's going to be okay, whether it works or it doesn't, we're going to move forward from here. One thing also I forgot to mention as far as drinking goes, like I said, I was super thirsty. I was definitely drinking a lot of water. I'm also a coffee person, love coffee, but I'm so stressed out in that moment and so wanting to make sure that I'm doing everything right. I was drinking 0 caffeine, none at all, which knowing what I know now and, knew at the time, but didn't want to believe, it's totally fine. If you're still drinking, a small cup of coffee a day or a decaf a day, it's totally fine. It's not going to affect anything. But, just During the time, I was doing absolutely everything I could think of to try to help, short of like doing handstands every day, which we all know, there's not really a whole lot that you can do or not do to help one way or the other. It's just when you've been going through this, that's just how your mind works. You're like, what can I do? What can I do to help? Tell me and I'll do it. So that was mine. I gave up coffee for that 2 weeks and about a month afterwards because I just wasn't mentally prepared to drink coffee yet. I do now, and it's totally fine. You'll get there. So like I said, I went in at 7:15, had this blood test done, was waiting all afternoon. I finally got a call about 1 in the afternoon from my nurse. My wife, of course, is deployed overseas, so I'm finally able to call her over FaceTime and let her know that it was successful and that I was pregnant. At that point, I went and took an at-home test after I got the results, because when you're trying to conceive for so long, month after month after month, you're wanting to see those 2 lines. So that's something that I didn't want to miss out on experiencing because I was doing IVF. So after getting a positive test result from my doctor, I did do an at-home test, and I did get a dye stealer, which if you're trying to conceive, you may or may not know what a dye stealer is. The control line that's on the test usually is darker than the positive test result line. In a dye stealer, the positive test line becomes darker than the control. Usually that indicates that there's a really good amount of hormone in your body, which gives you a pretty solid answer that yes, you definitely are pregnant. My HCG level that morning was 188, and they wanted to see anything over 100. So I was definitely happy with that. And they scheduled me for a repeat test 2 days later to make sure that things were progressing as they should. So when you do multiple blood tests like that, that's kind of similar to those that do at-home testing and see the line get darker and darker. It's pretty much the same as line progression. When your hormone level continues to rise like that, it gives you an indication that things are getting more stable as they go along. Being alone for the 2-week wait was definitely a different experience. My wife and I had tried at home for a very long time, so we've gone through that period of time before together. This was the first time that we've gone through it with IVF, and it was the first time for me to go through it alone. I definitely had to keep myself busy. I was doing anything that I could to try to keep my mind off of, am I pregnant? Am I not? I think because I was going through IVF, I was so cautious and so in tune with my body to try to pay attention to anything that was happening, anything that was different. So for me personally, I definitely noticed everything. So I'm not saying that you're going to have all of these symptoms because it was probably me overanalyzing, but you could. So I mentioned my appetite didn't really change. As far as nausea, that's one thing that I left out because I didn't really have any. I didn't have any nausea. I didn't have any like dizziness or anything like that. I know some people can have that happen, but for me, it just wasn't something that happened. We know now that we are having a little boy, which, the wives' tale is that you don't really get as much morning sickness with a boy. And that definitely held true for me. I had like 1 solid week of morning sickness, and that was about it. I'm going to do another video on my first trimester and early pregnancy symptoms in that sense, because there's just too much. There's too much to try to go through along with the 2-week wait. So yeah, that was my experience with our 2-week wait. If you're going through it right now, I feel you. I see you. I know it sucks. I know you're overanalyzing everything right now. And I know you're looking for anything that you can to indicate whether or not you're pregnant. That's part of the reason that I wanted to do this video, because I feel like some of the things that I went through were a little bit different than what I had seen from people on YouTube already. I wasn't nauseous. I didn't have implantation symptoms. My chest really wasn't overly sore. So for me, seeing other people go through that and then me not having that, you know. So even if you're not having those symptoms, try to hold out hope. It doesn't necessarily mean that things aren't working. Maybe you just don't have those symptoms. Also, I definitely had days where I had less symptoms than others. I was going to the bathroom less. I wasn't as thirsty. And of course, to me, I'm like, what's happening? Are the hormones going back down? Is it not working? Is it in my head? You start to overthink everything. Here I am, 20 weeks pregnant. So it fluctuates. There's definitely days where you're going to feel more pregnant than other days. Try not to let it freak you out. I know that's way easier said than done. I'd love to hear from you guys down in the comments, letting me know if you've had these symptoms or if there was some other symptom that you've had that nobody really talks about. If you're currently going through your 2-week wait or you're going through an IVF cycle, drop a comment, let me know. I'm here to support. I would love to talk to you about it. Especially during these times with all of the COVID restrictions, I know that things can be a little isolated. You might be feeling a little bit more alone because of it. Going into appointments alone sucks. I did all of that too. I did the egg retrieval alone. I did the transfer alone. All of the ultrasounds I did alone. You're not alone. Other than that, that is enough blabbing for today. I've talked your ear off at this point. I know it's been a rough year. I know if you're watching this, you're probably going through even more emotions right now. I'm going in for my 20-week scan next week, so I'm probably going to be doing a video on that next. But between now and then is right in the middle of the holiday season. So whether you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, New Year's, whatever it is that you celebrate, I hope you have a really great holiday season. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching this video. If you wouldn't mind just liking, maybe even subscribing to the channel or leaving me a comment about your experience with the 2-week wait, I would really appreciate it. Other than that, I will see you guys next week. Bye.